Hi everyone, this is Karen Frith. Welcome to the Consultant Collective series. I've spent the last 10 years working with and learning from some of the best consultants in the market, and now many of them are joining me to discuss how they've built a thriving business, how they've survived huge shifts in the marketplace, and to share the secrets of their success with you. The one question everyone asks me is, how do I start my own consulting business? So the Consultant Collective series will provide answers. Join me and some of the most experienced consultants in my network to learn, apply and share strategies to grow your consulting business. My name is Karen Frith and welcome to the Consultant Collective series.
Steve, you and I have been in the same circles for quite some time now, but we never actually crossed paths, which is unbelievable given the location that we've both worked in and the type of organisations that we've both worked in. So yeah, it's interesting that during 2020, you know, we managed to sort of get together. We got to know each other a little bit more, and certainly the ambition that shone through, the need to do something different was so obvious. It was palpable, to be honest with you. And you know, that's where we weren't even in the same room together, but you just have this drive that means, you know what, you've identified that the market's changing, you know you've got to do something different about it, and you're taking control, which is so refreshing in the current environment. Lots of people are quite happy to sort of let the market changes wash over them and basically roll over and go, yeah, okay, this is the way the world is at the moment. But not you. You know, you've chosen a niche in M&A that you are going to be competing with some of the big boys, you know, but I know why you've done it. And as we get further into the conversation, I'll applaud you for that, because I think you are opening up some really skilled resource and capability to organizations that potentially wouldn't be able to afford it. You know, they wouldn't default to the big consultancies. And you're going to bring this rounded service to them that they wouldn't ordinarily get. I think you've also identified a really great market that's going to expand in 2021. You know, there's absolutely no doubt that 2020 probably depressed the M&A market significantly. I mean, I've done some research on some of the numbers. You know, it was still worth in excess of 10 billion, but I think the numbers, the actual phasing throughout the year last year, in Q1 it was 14 million. That no, was it 14 or 1.4 billion in Q1? Right. That's the number. And then in Q2 it dropped off to less than 100 million, something like that, I think it was. And then it started to go through. But overall, it was about 10 billion last year. The market is normally about 20 billion in the domestic market. And then obviously there's the international market as well. So you've definitely hit on something. I think it's only going to grow. But I suppose the question for me at the beginning would be, how did 2020 help you with that? I mean, it would have been so easy to see the M&A market drop off a cliff and get a bit nervous. Nobody would have sort of blamed you for going, oh, maybe this is not the way to go. So how did you approach the challenges in 2020? And what did it give you the opportunity to do differently?
I guess for me, I think of my career as having gone through, well, 3 phases, although the third phase is more of we're just starting up in that phase. So the first phase was about working my way up the permanent career ladder. I got to a program manager with Shop Direct, and I was lucky enough to get involved in the integration of 2 companies, which combined had a value of 1.2 billion. And that was a real game changer for me. It gave me the opportunity to work with a lot of external consultants. And I think it was an opportunity that I was able to develop and gain in confidence. So I learned some better ways of doing some stuff. I realized actually I wasn't too bad at my job. And it gave me a lot of opportunities, part of that merger and acquisition. I then stayed with Shop Direct for about another 4 years, nearly 5 years, after the integration was complete. And then the opportunity came up to leave and to start contracting. And I guess for me, that's probably the second phase of my career. So I've left permanent employment and becoming a consultant. and I'm not saying it's not about the money, because obviously, you know, you get paid well for your expertise. But for me, it was about going, I've learned what I can with Shop Direct. I didn't feel I was necessarily going to grow an awful lot further in that change space. But I wanted to experience the change cultures at a number of different companies to see how they did it, and to see, you know, if there was anything else I can learn. I always think of myself as going in with a toolbox, and I like to leave a little something with each company and take a little something away. Sometimes that's somebody else can do things differently, and that might be better or worse, but you learn both ways. So contracting was big for me in that space. Also, my first contract happened to be another merger and acquisition, where there was a venture capital firm that was integrating two businesses in the financial services space. So one was a debt management business and one was a debt purchase business. And the venture capital firm had bought both, and the managing director of there and the program director for the integration were people I'd worked with on my first one at Shop Direct. So they knew me, they knew what I could do, and they needed a bit of help in solving some of the problems that they had with that. Since then, I've worked as an independent consultant, and I've worked with 16 clients to date on a variety of programs. But just before the pandemic hit, I was contacted by a niche consultancy who were advising an SME board on a new program methodology, and they asked me to come and help and advise the board on how to set up the governance structure, what toolkit to put in place, how they could amend some of the collateral that they had, what did that future methodology look like for the growth acquisition that they were looking to purchase. And it was something that for me made me think, this is something I really enjoy, and it was a bit of I want to do a bit more of that than I've done for a while. So for me, the third phase, I finished a contract back in, I think it was late 2019, and when I came out, it was quite difficult to get my next contract. I'd never before had a problem in picking the contract up. I think the longest period of being out of work was 6 weeks. So I was used to finding contracts quite easily, and all of a sudden, because of concerns with companies around IR35, the market shrunk significantly. And for me, the pandemic just elongated that challenge. And I guess I began to realize that, like a lot of businesses that went through the pandemic, I had some significant risks with my business model that meant I was not adequately mitigating those risks. So my income was limited by the number of days that I could work each year, so roughly 220 days a year. If there was an economic impact, then my work would be hard to get. And the market had become awash with contractors because of companies were letting people go, or people didn't want to take inside IR35 roles. So it was much more difficult to be seen than I'd experienced before. And that was something that I just didn't want to operate with, and I needed a different way of doing it. So initially, I'd thought about my third phase would be, I'd gone from permanent, I'd gone into contracting. It would be about becoming a NED, a non-exec director, using the experience that I'd had over the years to help companies who are looking to go through a transformation without me necessarily having to be at the coalface. And I joined a networking group that was focused for me around helping to secure just such a role. I only wanted one. I wanted to dip my toe in the water, and I wanted to be able to do something for 2-3 years max, and then move on, with a view that that would probably become more in the future, and I'd do less day rate contracting. But I think my thought process has evolved further during the pandemic. And in my search for trying to do things differently, then obviously I came across you, Karen, and I knew of you, but I don't think we actually knew each other. So I knew your name. We've definitely worked in similar organizations before, and your name would come up in conversation, but I didn't know you directly. And what I liked was the way you also could see that the contractors needs to think differently about the marketplace. And I'm a massive believer in things happen for a reason, and you just don't necessarily know why at the time. And even the bad times are going to teach you something, and you're going to learn something from them. So for me, 8 months with limited income certainly gave me a laser focus on what I wanted to do going forward, on trying to come up with something different, so that I just didn't expose my family to that level of financial risk again. It was a pretty tough time for everyone in the family.
Yeah.
So I've realised that during that period, and following subsequent conversations with a number of organisations, that there's a definite market there for small consultancies that can provide small teams to deliver a complete solution. But this means you need to operate in a different way to get those clients, different than the way I was certainly operating as a day rate contractor, where generally I was getting work through people I'd worked with before. So it was reputation, they knew me. I either worked with them in a different client, or they put me in touch with somebody and recommended me in. I certainly didn't go much through recruitment companies, although I've had lots of conversations with them. I didn't get much work through that. I guess both you and your team have provided some mentorship and helped me expedite that journey into that new way of operating. And the community that you've built, and it is a wide community, and they bring different personalities, different skill sets. So that additional support has been able to give encouragement and advice when you most need it. So sometimes it's not always about trying to get the answer from you and your direct team. Sometimes actually having other people provide input is equally useful. And certainly taking from a different angle certainly helps. And I guess the other game changer for me was, so playing back to something you constantly say to the group, is always say yes and then work out how to do it later. And I've got a friend who's an ex-dancer who lives in Miami, and she went from being a dancer to the marketing director at Royal Caribbean. And that's largely from just following exactly that advice. She would many a night say, yes, I can do something, and then go home and spend the night learning things that she'd claimed earlier in the day that she was proficient at. And she just, learned how to do it and was able to prove the point the next day or the next week or whatever. So a good friend of mine, a good contact of mine, approached me at the probably Q3 last year and asked if I was interested in running a project for him. He knew what I could do. And he's like, I know you've not been around working much, so this might be useful to you. It might just be fractional to start with, but are you interested? Now, I picked a contract up a couple of months before that, so my standard response would always have been no. But on this occasion, with your words ringing in my ears, I said, well, let me just try and understand what it is that you're trying to achieve there. And we talked through for quite a while, and we worked out that he needed both a project manager and a BA, and he needed those on a fractional basis, a couple of days a week to start with, eventually 3 days a week, probably never going to become a full-time piece of work. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, whilst I'm not free, I know plenty of people that would be ideal for this. Why don't I source those for you, and I'll give you a limited couple to look at, and I'll provide them through my company for you. So that's something never done before, would never have done probably before we met, but it's given me the opportunity to get some extra income, which has been useful. But it's also allowed me to learn a few lessons for the future on how to do things and manage directly some work that will be useful when as I go on with M&As and putting teams in there. So yeah, it's been a really interesting time, and I guess it's allowed me to be perhaps more laser focused than I would normally have been on wanting to do things differently.
And I think the time that we've all had, no commuting, you've made best use of that. You've really gone and thought, well, actually, how do I really use the time well that I would have spent on the M62? So that's a couple of hours at least a day that you go, actually, what do I need to do now? And you've made yourself available for accelerator courses, during lunch times when we've run those types of things. So all credit to you to actually stepping up and going, you know what, I've been given, the whole world has been given this unique opportunity, some might say. You know, it has been brutal for quite a lot of people, and unfortunately, you know, you and I have both sort of swerved an awful lot of that, but we've managed to go, well, actually, I'm never going to get this time again. I'm never going to get this opportunity to accelerate through what I need to do. You made a couple of interesting points there. One of the first things you said was, you know, you like to leave something and also take something away. That's one of the things that I always talk to people about their exit strategy. You know, as day one, you need your exit strategy.
Yeah.
Do you go in knowing what you want to take away? Do you look at the market or the organization and go, you know what, there's something quite unique here that I've either a skill or a team, and actually make it your business to go in and learn or take that one piece away that's going to help you in the future?
So I always think I'm a bit like you. I start off with knowing what I want to get out of it when I leave. What was the measure of success look like for me when I go? And sometimes you can add to that as you go. But yeah, so for instance, there's a piece of work I've been doing more recently. There's some space that I've not played in before that is being really useful to me, and I think it's going to provide further opportunities downstream with some M&A work. So for me, I always want to try and take a little something. And sometimes it can be as simple as how people operate in the change space and doing things slightly differently to the way you do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you go, do you know what? That's a better way of doing it than I do it. I'll take that away and I'll stick it in my toolbox and I'll use that one later because that's better than what I do now. Sometimes I also like to try and do a bit of mentoring. So I'm quite big on being able to give a bit back. So what I call delivery plus. I don't want to just go in and do a piece of work that does, I've ticked all the boxes and that's it. If I can help upskill somebody, if I can be a sounding board for somebody and just leave them in a slightly better place than when I started, there's not just the delivery of a piece of work, then that's an ideal engagement for me.
And that plays into, you know, so the last month of the contract for me. So if you've done all of that, if you've enabled your team, and hopefully it's the permanent team, so that you know you leave a legacy. If you've enabled all of that, the last month in the contract shouldn't be heavy lifting for you. You are there just to oversee, which allows you to then move seamlessly and can say yes to anything that crops up in that last month.
Exactly.
Whereas I think maybe the old model was, you know, you work to the death last day of the contract and then pop up and go, right, well, what's happening in the world now? It's that horizon scanning, that planning for your own business that I think, you know, as project managers, we've probably been a bit remiss in our own business to do that in the future. We're so concentrating on delivering to the clients that we actually forget about our own business planning and our own, you know, business continuity and pipeline and all that type of stuff. So, you know, you've nailed that as well, I think, in the last 12 months.
I guess one of the things I've learned from our conversations is that we're very good at going in and doing a piece of work for clients. We understand what the steps in the process is. What contractors aren't very good at doing is treating their own business in exactly the same way. And you know, I've been as guilty as the next person for that. And I think the last probably 18 months has been a bit of a light bulb moment for me and lots of people. And I think the difficulty is I searched around on a number of and joined a number of groups initially before I landed with you, and they some of them talk a good game and they give you certain bits, they give you enough what I call teasers, but there's not always the substance that goes beyond it. And contractors are very good at going, I'll do a piece of work for a client and I'll deliver it, and a lot of them are very good at that, but they just don't do the things in the same way for their own business. And that's the bit where people need help. And certainly that's something that I can say about mentorship. I think you and I have had the conversation on several occasions where you now sit informally on my board.
Yes,
and that's the way to treat it.
One of the secrets in Contractor Secrets is about your personal board. That's come back to bite me a few times in the last few. I think I'm now sat on so many personal boards. It's like, you know,
welcome.
Thanks for that. Yeah. Yeah. I think you've been the voice of that over the past few months, and everybody's gone, oh, if it's working for Steve, I'm going to do it as well. So yeah. So interesting, the market that you've chosen. I mean, to me, this is probably in the hard to do box because of the amount of focus that the big guys give on it. You know, there's a lot of money to be made in the M&A market. So tell me why did, I know you've already touched on it was something that you were interested in, but we get past the vanity bit, don't we? We get past that, oh, I could do this. I've done a couple of projects. I know how to do it. It's when it becomes the core of your own business, it's really hard work then, because you've got to do all the business stuff around as well as delivering. I think the last 6 or 7 months has proven that, you know, outsourcing is a model that you've explored, certainly with your latest, you know, the consultancy piece. That in itself brings benefits and challenges. So the benefits are, you know, you can just pass some of the work on and it will get delivered. The challenges are you've then got to oversee it. You've then got to make sure that you're steering the ship. You know, there's a little bit of responsibility there as well, depending on who the client is, and to be the managing partner, to sort of have to go in and not be at the coalface, but to face some of the challenges from the client because maybe things have not gone as well. We do that as program managers, but you're there living and breathing it most of the time as a contractor. This is more hands-off. So it's going to be amplified in the M&A space. And especially, you know, we've talked about you moving across the pond and maybe breaking into America as well. You know, that is going to really amplify some of the challenges. So why M&A? You could have picked an easy one.
Well, for me, M&A integrations are a really, really exciting area to work in. And there are pitfalls for companies when they go into the M&A space, but these can be avoided if you use proven expertise. We've niched down on M&A integrations for SMEs, so where the companies are paying up to around 100 million or so for an acquisition, so probably not an awful lot beyond that. And for us, SMEs have several key problems when they're looking to do an acquisition. So generally, they have no dedicated in-house integration team to call on to do this work. So they potentially need some external help with that. They are quite often worried what the distraction will be to their existing business and the business that they're purchasing, and what impact that's going to have on hitting their, let's call it BAU numbers. So if you think about it, when you're buying a company, you've got the purchase price for the company, you've got the company needing to hit their planned numbers irrespective. You want to make sure that the business you already own is not impacted and it can still hit its numbers. And then you've got a number of synergies that you will identify when you're going to purchase a company that you think the combined business will be able to achieve. And then, so you need to make sure that you get all of that value from the deal. And that means you need to make sure that your current businesses do not get impacted by doing the integration. And if you think about it, 2/3 of acquisition transactions fail to realize what they set out to achieve. And in a lot of cases, there's simple methods that you can follow that will help you avoid some of that. And if you've been through that space before, then you've got a better chance of avoiding those inherent risks that are there in any acquisition. SME owners generally don't know how they even go about starting the integration of the companies. They either don't consider the cost that they're going to incur when they integrate the businesses, or are equally scared by how much it's going to cost them. And then the last one, I guess, that are probably worthwhile bringing to light is how do they go about realizing all the synergies that they plan to get out of that acquisition? Because really, that's why they're doing it. So we believe that SMEs deserve exactly the same support as the big boys at a affordable price, which is why we provide a full package, a turnkey package, so that the owners are not impacted by the distraction of the integration. And we do that by putting ourselves in our client's shoes and driving the outcomes through collaboration that allows them to then unlock the full potential of the combined business. And we think there's probably 7 key benefits from working with us as opposed to some of the big boys. So we will only provide proven experts for acquisition integration. So you'll only have people that have done it before. We provide small expert teams that have less juniors in them than the large consultancies. So if you go and work with a large consultancy, they go in with like a pyramid model. You have somebody who's sitting at the top of that, who've done lots of them, and sitting at the bottom, you have a plethora of people who are postgrads with limited to 2-3 years experience, but you're paying a fortune for them.
You're paying to train the graduates.
You're paying to train them up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this means that our teams can quickly add value because they've done it all before. We offer efficiency and proven expertise, coupled with lower structural costs. You know, you're not going to have to pay for some of the stuff that you get with a large consultancy. And you get more transparency from us around those costs. We can offer a choice of professionals from our network, which allows our clients to pick teams or gives them the opportunity to pick teams and profiles with precise requirements that are then tailored to their needs. We offer the flexibility and agility of a smaller, hungrier firm, which I think is more suited to our clients' needs than that of a larger consultancy. They're certainly not as agile. They're certainly not as hungry when they're a very large organization, you know, the Bains, the Deloittes.
Yeah. And your client was in fact one of those hungry firms. That's where they're growing. So, you know, they're working with like-minded people. They're working with entrepreneurs because exactly. You know, your team are consultants who, you know, have run their own business or are continuing to run their own business and actually will face into the same challenges as they scale their business as your clients face into. So that in itself, that affinity has really got to be a really strong pull. You know, these people have skin in the game just as much as the client does.
I guess for us, we're passionate about working collaboratively with our client teams and their partners, because smaller companies generally outsource a bit like I do, a bit like we do. You know, they have a lot of partners, and therefore it's about collaborative working.
Yeah.
For me, I guess the tagline to that is we only win together. There's no we win and you fail. Yeah. We either all succeed or we all fail. And you know what? I just don't like failing. So we're all going to win together.
Yeah.
And I guess finally for us, it's about, and this is definitely a difference between us and the bigger consultancies. We're quite happy to transfer our knowledge to the in-house team. And we can do that because our consultants are all embedded in our clients' teams, and they're not a separate suited clique with an almost standoffish attitude.
Yeah.
So, and because, you know, we're confident and capable, then it's a much more engaging relationship, a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah. So that knowledge transfer is really key because, you know, you are setting up the new organization, the combined organization for success. And one of the measures of success for you is that they could actually run this themselves going forward. They can, you know, continue to optimize and get the longer term synergies. You know, and I'm sure that there are many conversations to be had around, you know, once the first deliverables over, you know, because you will create relationships where, you know, an ongoing relationship is what's needed, but not necessarily boots on the ground full time to get them across the line, because you've already achieved that. You know, you're in. You fix things, you're out, but you're always there so that people can refer back to you or bring you in as and when necessary, so they can create that longer term relationship.
Exactly. So for us, we can offer full-time, part-time, fractional. We can offer, you know, coaching. We can do health checks. But for us, it's about building a relationship up. If they want us back, then we'll happily come back and help them. But if we do a good job with them and we set them up for success, there's a higher likelihood and chance that they're going to recommend us to somebody else. Yeah. And you then get, you know, a lot of work comes from recommendations, and it always has done.
Yeah.
It's a stronger pull if someone can recommend you than if somebody doesn't know you. You've got to build those relationships up to succeed.
Word of mouth marketing is worth it's priceless compared to everything else. But you've got to kick off the marketing with some of the more traditional routes. So
you got to make a footprint to start with.
Yeah. So I think certainly with your network, I mean, you're not just talking about seasoned M&A professionals who have done this, but you've got access to, accountants and financial controllers and marketing and so there's the full C-suite. You've got access to COOs and CIOs that can come in and work with their partners. You can bring them in on a fractional basis if there's a piece, so an integration piece with one particular ERP and another ERP, and the two companies are trying to come together. You've got people in your network that you can bring that skill in on an advisory basis as and when. It doesn't need to be part of the core team that they're paying for.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. And there's quite often a need for small HR support, where let's call it HR directors, but people who've been through it before that can almost help advise on one of the big challenges is cultural. How do you mesh two cultures together? And there's skilled expertise that have been through that on several acquisitions before, who can provide that fractional support to help them get through that. And I know that's something that really worries a lot of owners. How do we handle that cultural difference?
Well, what's that quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast, doesn't it? So if you don't address that up front and you start to nurture the joint teams and the relationships, whatever you do anywhere else, it just becomes a paper exercise. I believe you've got to get the culture right. Wonderful. Well, I can see it's very exciting. I can see why you've got into the particular market now, and I think you're right, actually. You're not competing with the big boys. You are giving your clients an alternative route where they maybe wouldn't have gone with the big boys, and they'll have gone out and hired independent skills that don't necessarily mesh, because there's that culture thing again. You go out and get 5 contractors who have got different disciplines, bring them all in together. You've then got to manage that team. You might get a program manager in to manage that team, but it's still 5 different individuals that maybe have not worked together before, and you've got that ramp up of that. There's just not that connection there. I've always found that to be a bit of a flaw with the overall contracting market, and we all make relationships. We all know how to hit the ground running and forge those relationships that mean our clients get what they need. But it takes time, and basically the clients are paying for that time, while everything gets mobilized and your boots on the ground straight in, you can do this. And I think if you can provide multidisciplined niche teams as well, that's so powerful. A lot of the consultancies I'm seeing crop up are where a lot of IT teams have got together, so, and in some respects, you need maybe need a cohort of engineers or of cloud specialists, or of change managers. But actually, how do they bring that HR lens in, that finance lens in, that comms lens? You've got access to all of these people, some of it through the academy, some of it through your own network that you've cultivated. And I think your company can draw on all of those as and when it's necessary. So I think you've hit on a niche, and the market's definitely expanding. So we've just got to get you across to the States, because that's where the big money is. Okay, so with that in mind, what is next? Are you going to think about global expansion? Are you going to think about maybe putting all of this down in a book, or what's next?
So I guess the US does the most M&A transactions globally for any country in the world, but the UK is definitely one of the most acquisitive countries after the US. I think it might be 3rd in the list. Also, the highest volume of cross-border M&A deals globally continues to be between the US and the UK. US coming into the UK and use UK as an entrance into Europe in a lot of cases. And that's because of culturally they're very similar to each other. The current economic climate has devastated some sectors of the economy, but it's also made owners and executives pay closer attention, a bit like I did, to the risk inherent in their existing business models. So for me, with the low cost of debt that's currently in place, and there's so many distressed businesses out there, it's a key time for SMEs to consider acquisitions to help turbocharge their growth. And they can do that by acquiring complementary products, accessing new markets and distribution channels, building economies of scale, or utilizing new technology or staff capacity. In a lot of cases, Apple purchased not for the technology, but for the staff and the skilled staff that they're getting. They don't necessarily always keep all the customers that the companies that have purchased. It's quicker to solve some of these challenges through acquisition rather than doing it through organic growth. And we're seeing a lot of new investors coming into the market who are looking to acquire several companies with the aim of selling an enlarged group in the medium term at a very healthy profit. So the next steps for us are to expand the number of client integrations that we're working on and in turn grow our team. You never know, we may look to acquire someone ourselves at some point in the future. And we certainly would like to get to the point where we become an acquisition target for someone else. Whether we choose to sell or not is almost immaterial. That's a goal that we'd like to get to, that somebody sees the value in us. We think there's going to be opportunities to expand into other territories. And given the volume of transactions in the US, we're certainly keeping a very close eye on getting into that market. We'll continue to develop partnerships and reciprocal relationships. We believe that's probably the fastest way to grow. And training courses are certainly on our roadmap for the future, but there's no current plans for a book. But I learned a long time ago to never say never. So who knows?
Always say yes.
Always say yes. And we can foresee lots of sectors where we think there's opportunities for acquisitions, but maybe we'll save that one for a whole separate conversation on another day.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's very exciting. I think the steps you've taken over the last 6 months, certainly from where I'm sitting, you know, you've got a plan, you've got your head down, you are going to deliver against that plan. Come hell or high water.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, failure is not an option. Okay, so we have to do this, and it's really great to the fact that, you know, we are working so closely together. I know you've been very supportive of the work that we've tried to do. You hosted office hours for me last week, which went down very well. In fact, I'm a bit nervous now about tomorrow's because I'm back on, and it's you know, I've got a tough act to follow. But I do think, you know, just your input into the community that I'm building and the support that you give the other team members as well, that mentorship absolutely comes out, you know, and you're doing it with potential competitors at the moment, which I think is absolutely amazing. You know, this is the way we all should work. You know, don't think of them as competitors the way the old model, you know, you're going up against against other contractors for a role. No, what we're doing is we're building that network of collaborators who we've now got eyes and ears across the breadth of the country. You know, people know that you're available for a couple of weeks' work, that they can throw you in and their brand is protected. But you're also coaching an awful lot. I know in the behind the scenes you have conversations with a lot of the members, and you're coaching them, and you're giving them that confidence that they can do this, to say yes, you know, and we're seeing that now. We're seeing more of our members get multiple clients because they don't on a Tuesday morning think, oh my God, I'm going to say no because I'm busy this week. They say yes, might come to a pulse call or an office hours and go, what have I done? And we all go, no, that's the right thing to do. You know, we've got your back. So no, so thank you for me for that, because you know, you've helped the community grow.
Well, for me, they're not necessarily competitors, they're potential collaborators. So they might find work that they can't fulfill and help me. They might be able to collaborate on a piece of M&A work that I'm doing myself. You know, so there's lots of ways you can do that. I mean, I had a conversation with somebody in the community the other day and said, and he's going in to pitch on an M&A deal. And I said, well, why don't we do it together? You know, I can bring stuff that you can't do, and you can bring stuff that I can't do. Why don't we do it as you know, a force together? Because we can bring things to the party that others won't, and it might make us look better in front of the eyes of the clients.
Absolutely. You're not perceived then as a one-man band. You're not perceived, you know, you've got that more holistic approach to delivery, which, you know, will blow the minds of the clients away. They're not used to this, and I'm seeing that you know, the market is responding to all of this positivity, and actually they're going, okay, they're opening the checkbooks up to the niche consultancies now, and they're talking to, you know, the recruitment teams. They're talking to the more importantly, their procurement teams about getting niche consultancies on the PSL. Whereas, you know, it was harder in the old days. You know, when you went through a recruitment consultant, you were in the HR lane. Now we're going through procurement and we're in the supplier lane. Completely different relationship, you know, scary sometimes, especially if we're not used to it. But that's what we're all behind each other going, no, you can do this. It's not that scary, believe me, you can do it. So yeah, it's been really great talking to you. I know you won't be a stranger. We're going to meet again in the morning. So I think tomorrow, let share some of the experience of doing this with the team, if you don't mind, because, you know, we've got a full book for the next 2 months now with some of the team members, you know, so a little bit of sort of the behind the scenes of, you know, of how you prepped. You know, you had to iron a shirt for the first time in months. But no, it's been great talking to you. So thank you very much, and good luck with everything. Okay.
Thank you very much, Karen. And thanks for all your support. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.